Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com. One of you asked me recently if I could provide a list of great mono recordings because somebody is collecting mono recordings. You want to go back into the pre-stereo era. And that's a perfectly legitimate request, and I'm happy to supply it. It's actually very, very interesting. The fact that something is recorded in mono doesn't mean that it's necessarily inferior. It will be more limited in some ways in the projection of the sonic image in your listening space, but in terms of timbral fidelity and things like that, if it was recorded in the glory days of mono, that is anything from like the late 40s to the late 50s, you're likely to have something that sounds perfectly fine. I mean, really, you'll hear everything you need to hear. Let's put it that way. I mean, the operative idea for good sound really should be that the engineering doesn't get in the way of the performance. That is, what the performers do comes through the speakers cleanly and clearly. And that could happen at any time from roughly the electrical era on, depending on, who the engineers were and the quality of the transfers, and then, of course, remastering. I mean, the irony of this whole situation is that there's probably more mono stuff available today than there ever was in the mono era, because the major labels and the people who made these recordings were sitting on them like Fafner. Fafner, the dragon in the ring cycle, guarding his hoard. And now they've decided they want to try and extract a few dollars from what they've been sitting on, and it's all gotten boxed up and released. So most of the things I'm going to talk about have been recently re-released, and a lot of them are available still. Most of them are available still. They may be hard to source individually because they're in boxes or something, but you've still got plenty from which to choose. And what I've tried to do here is put together a sort of a basic library of stuff, a survey that will give you a really nice overview of the most important repertoire from the mono era. And so here we go. And of course, you are all more than welcome to chime in with your own list of 16 great mono recordings. I mean, crusty old geezers that I know we are, I'm sure that won't be too difficult. So, you ready? Here we go. Bach. Goldberg Variations, Glenn Gould, the 1955 Glenn Gould premiere disc, the iconic recording of the Goldberg Variations. Piano music really doesn't suffer from the mono treatment as much as orchestral music does. I mean, if it's a decent pickup and, well engineered in a good room, you're not going to even notice the difference. It's just going to be fine. So that's a good place to start collecting, I think. Next, Schubert, his great symphony, Symphony No. 9, with Furtwängler and the Berlin Philharmonic on Deutsche Grammophon. Furtwängler made very few studio recordings. He didn't like to do it. He was a notoriously variable conductor. His Schubert Ninth is one of the great ones, and it sounds very, very good. It gives you a very good sense of what all the fuss is about when it comes to Furtwängler and his legacy, which is a whole issue that we don't need to get into. Do not fall into the cult. Don't fall into any cult. Avoid the cults. Just get the good recordings, and this is certainly one of them. Then, Beethoven's Fifth. This is the Fifth. Beethoven's Fifth. It's not the Third. It's not the Ninth. It's not the Fourth. It's not the Seventh. Not the Eighth. It's not the Sixth. It's just the Fifth. You know that. Anyway, Erich Kleiber with the Concertgebouw Orchestra on Decca. This is not Carlos Kleiber, his son, who made an iconic recording of the Fifth in stereo. His father was even better. Who are we kidding? And it's a fantastically taut, exciting, and well-recorded performance on Decca. Debussy's Preludes. Well, in the mono era, the Debussy guy was Walter Gieseking. He was the ultimate Debussy pianist. At least that's what everybody thought back then. And he recorded the complete Debussy piano music on EMI. It's been remastered now a bazillion times to sound better than it ever has. And they're definitely worth hearing. He had an amazing sense of touch. That was his thing, touch. There have been zillions of recordings of Debussy's Preludes since then that many will prefer. Me among them. I mean, I think that he was great for his day, but as with all of these people, sometimes there are better things, sometimes they're kind of unique, but Gieseking was a force in that repertoire, and he's definitely worth hearing. Dvořák, the Slavonic dances with George Szell and the Cleveland Orchestra. Szell re-recorded these works in stereo, but I actually think the monos sound better. They have greater clarity, and the performances are just as lively and wonderful. And if you can find them, they're in the big Szell box, but if you can find them separately, the earlier monos, then you should definitely hear them because they're fantastic performances of inimitably delicious music. And the mono recordings, yeah, I think they just deliver a little bit more bang for your buck than the stereo ones did. Then we've got Puccini's Tosca. Oh, the iconic Maria Callas, Tito Gobi, Victor de Sabata, Warner Tosca. It's been in print since the day it was issued. It's absolutely wonderful. Now, opera is a whole unique world in itself, and I've only put one opera on here. I could have chosen more. There's the Beach and Bohème, and there's all kinds of stuff. That Dialogues of the Carmelites, it's incredible. Lots of great opera recordings in mono. However, the issue with opera recordings is that opera people who are crazy are only interested in voices. They're not interested in like the orchestra or the conductor or just about anything else that happens in opera. They just want to hear voices front and center. And so you'll find lots of people recommending atrocious sounding opera performances that are all but unlistable, except that their favorite singer is somehow close enough to the microphones that you can hear what they're shrieking about. You have to be careful when it comes to opera. There was a huge controversy, I remember, a few decades ago, when Elisabeth Schwarzkopf said that her recording of Der Rosenkavalier on EMI, on Warner, with Carillon, sounded better in mono than stereo. And they actually reissued it in mono because they felt that in the mono mix, the voices were more forward. In the stereo mix, they were better blended into the orchestral tapestry. And of course, singers don't care about the orchestral tapestry. They only want to hear themselves. And so that's, it was very interesting, and the whole thing was very, very funny. So they reissued the mono version. There you go. So it just goes to show you it is to some extent a matter of taste, and I understand the opera people who only want to hear the voices and really don't give a damn what anybody else is doing, but a lot of people do like to hear the gorgeous orchestration of people like Puccini. Sometimes it matters more than others. Anyway, you have to take it on a case-by-case basis. So that's the opera, if you want to dip your toes into it. Beethoven, the complete piano sonatas with Wilhelm Kempff. Kempff also remade them in stereo on Deutsche Grammophon, but Deutsche Grammophon issued the mono cycle. And the mono cycle, the earlier cycle, is generally regarded to be just a touch more peppy, maybe a little bit better than the later stereo remake. Artists do not always deliver greater insights. That's the great word that means nothing in classical music. Oh, this performance has more insight. Well, what's an insight? What does an insight sound like? How can you tell what an insight's doing? How do you compare one insight to another insight and decide what, one person's insight is another person's mannerism. It's all just terribly, terribly subjective. And so when people are always talking about how their latest performance had the insights, take that with a grain of salt. Anyway, it's a wonderful Beethoven piano sonata cycle, and it sounds fine. It sounds absolutely fine. Then we've got Mozart Symphonies 35 through 41, the late Mozart symphonies with Bruno Walter and the New York Philharmonic. He also re-recorded them this is all for Sony, with the Columbia Symphony Orchestra later in his life. Performances that are more mellow and just a touch more, sunsetty and autumnal, if you want to call it that. Softer edged. He was a little bit more exciting in his earlier days with the New York Phil. And again, the sound's really good. So there you go. You can do really well by Mozart. Beethoven, Symphony number 7, with Arturo Toscanini and the New York Philharmonic on RCA. And all these are listed, below this video. So you don't have to worry about what I'm saying here. You just look at the list. This was recorded in, 1936, somewhere around there. And it's regarded as maybe the first great modern orchestral recording. I'm not kidding. It's one of the great Beethoven 7s for sure. And although it's the earliest recording in this list, and the sound is kind of, you got to listen through the surface noise. But if you get a good transfer, the actual sound itself is quite good. I mean, you hear the orchestra in a natural balance and a good acoustic. So it's fine once you've adjusted yourself to the deficiencies of that early mono recording. But wow, what a performance. And it really set the standard for what modern orchestral playing ought to be. It's been in print since forever. And we had it when I was growing up as a kid. I mean, everybody had it. And it's a tremendous, tremendous recording. And of course, the whole Toscanini legacy is a whole mono universe within itself. So there's that too. Brahms, Symphonies 1 through 4, all of them. They're on 2 discs with Eugen Joachim and the Berlin Philharmonic on Deutsche Grammophon. Joachim was a fabulous Brahms conductor, just an astounding Brahms conductor. He made 2 great Brahms cycles, one in stereo, one in mono. The mono Berlin one is regarded as one of the greatest Brahms cycles ever, and enough said. It's all you need to do. You'll be thrilled. They're just tremendous performances. The sonics are a little variable there. Some of them sound better than the others. They were done over a period of time, but boy, are they hot performances. Fabulous performances. Stravinsky, The Rite of Spring, with Pierre Monteux, the Boston Symphony on RCA. Now, Monteux conducted the premiere of The Rite of Spring. This is Mildred down here. Hi, honey. The cat. She wants to play. Anyway, he conducted the premiere. He made stereo recordings with the Paris Conservatory Orchestra that are horrible. Just dreadful. His best recording of the work was the mono Boston version. It's just better in all ways by playing sonically, the whole deal. It's a very exciting performance, and it's definitely worth hearing for the authority that Monteux brought to the work. Let's see, Chopin, the Waltzes with Dino Lipati. Dino Lipati was a great Romanian pianist. He had leukemia. He died quite young. His discography is very limited, and it's extraordinary. And the Chopin waltzes are iconic versions of those works. I mean, everybody has to have them. And again, they sound just fine. They sound just fine, and he is an amazing performer. Then we've got Mussorgsky Ravel, Pictures at an Exhibition with Raphael Kubelik of the Chicago Symphony Orchestra on Mercury Living Presence. These are legendary audiophile recordings. They set the mono era on fire with simple microphone placement, thrilling natural sonics. And Kubelik did a bunch of mono recordings in Chicago, and for Mercury Living Presence, it was that recording that established the name Living Presence. One of the reviewers said, it's as if you hear the living presence of the orchestra in your living room or whatever. I don't know what it was, but it was something like that. And so the Mercury monos are legendary among audiophiles and people like that. And it's very, very good performances, too. On top of it all, there's a Mavlast, Smetana Mavlast, which is fantastic, and quite a few other things. So that's a legacy to keep in mind. All the Mercury monos with Antal Dorati and Paul Paré, they were special. Let's see, what else have we got here? Haydn, Symphonies 93 through 98, the first batch of London symphonies, with Thomas Beecham and the Royal Philharmonic on Warner. I understand the Beecham monos are coming in the fall, in October 2025, someone told me on the site. Hopefully they do. Beecham's Haydn was sui generis. It's a style of elegance and charm and wit that no longer exists. The additions are all wrong. They don't sound anything like period instrument performances, but they are just delightful, wonderful performances. Fantastic and legendary, iconic mono recordings. He did the latter 6 London symphonies in stereo. So they're all done around the same time, and the sonic differences aren't huge. They really aren't. They're good sounding recordings. Beethoven's Diabelli Variations, just to round out the Beethoven piano stuff, with Rudolf Serkin on Sony. Serkin was one of the great pianists of the 20th century, especially in the German repertoire. He did a lot of recording in mono, Brahms, Beethoven, particularly very, very well, extremely well. And his Diabelli Variations are among the great recordings of anything on the piano. They're sort of up there with the Goldberg variations, only for Beethoven. So give it a shot. I mean, if you don't know the work particularly, it's a fantastic work, and big and wide-ranging and incredibly enjoyable. And it's good to have some Rudolf Serkin in your mono collection. And last, but certainly not least, in this list of 16, have I gotten everything here? Yeah, I think I've gotten everything. Shostakovich, Symphony Number 10, with Karl Ancherl and the Czech Philharmonic on Deutsche Grammophon. This is unbelievably fabulous. I mean, the work was brand new when they recorded it, and you could just see Ancherl and the Czech Phil saying, we're going to show those Russians what we can do. It is better than any of the contemporaneous Russian recordings. It is more exciting. It's better played. It's extremely well recorded. It sounds just fine. And the work itself is arguably Shostakovich's symphonic masterpiece. It's just an incredible recorded event. Now, that was the 16. However, if you really want to go for broke with mono recordings, you can also, and you should probably do this, I mean, I think everybody should do it who cares about recordings, get the Ormandy Philadelphia Orchestra Complete Columbia Mono Recordings. It's 120 CDs worth of stuff. You get basically the whole symphonic repertoire and tons of unusual things and different things played to the hilt by the Philadelphia Orchestra, which at that point in its career, the late 40s up through like late 50s, was just about incomparable in terms of orchestral quality. Ormandy was a wonderful interpreter in a generalist sense. He could do anything well. And you've got this absolutely amazing pile of stuff that will take you years to get through. I guarantee it. There's a video. I made a video about the box. It's like an hour long. I mean, but if you really want to go for mono, just grab the Ormandy box, and then you almost don't have to do anything else for the rest of your life. It's just a fabulous investment in monitude. So there you have it, my friends. I mean, there's a lot of options in the wonderful world of mono, and I know that all you other folks will be chiming in with suggestions of your own. So keep on listening, friends. Thank you so much for joining me. Take care.